Namaste sir, my name is Prince and I am doing my PhD from Center for the Study of Law and Governance, JU. Sir, my question is related to the economics of the caste system.
Ji.
Today, sir, from past 75 years, we are looking for the solutions which are being incorporated in the West, and to eradicate those the caste system, we are imposing it in Indian society. Whereas when we see thousands years back, the caste system, the caste system was there, but most of the communities or the people were fed by the communities itself. Like from a teacher to the master, a teacher to the barber, everyone was being fed by the village or the communities. So how can we incorporate these solutions in combating the caste system in today's time? And sir, I have another question related to the temples law, which we are carrying the colonial baggage right now. The treasury of the temple are still taken up, sometimes taken up by the government.
So, what's your name, please?
Sir Prince.
Thank you so much. So, I don't think it's possible for us to even think of the economics of caste without addressing the politics of caste. And that's a very delicate, thorny issue to address. When one class of people effectively see that as an oppressive structure, which is oppressive by design, you're trying to tell them that there is an economic benefit to this, you'll immediately be told, well, there are economic benefits to slavery also. And therefore, the comparison will be directly between slavery and caste system. So, I think the one thing I've said repeatedly over the years is, it is one of the most reviled, poorly understood systems. Having said that, gradually when people realize that the growth-based model or the service-based model which we currently have employed has resulted in paucity of quality teachers, has resulted in paucity of, let's say, people who do it with a certain code of honor and not just for the remuneration of it. They may want to reconsider their own notions of what they think of the caste system. Is that system perfect? I am not going to comment on that because of paucity of knowledge on that particular front. I am not going to comment on that beyond it. However, does it deserve the kind of hatred that it gets? I don't think so. And let us be honest, by and large, caste makes its presence felt today primarily in major societal transactions, which effectively boils down to marriage. Beyond that, really, where does it make its presence felt? In urban spaces. Unless you're entrenching it further and further and further through the reservation debate. So I don't see how you can claim to fight caste and also entrench caste through reservation at the same time. Then you're speaking from both sides of your mouth. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde position. It's not. You can't put it together. You can't say the same thing in the same breath. Second, in terms of contemporary relevance of caste, I have come down to this final limited position. In so-called modern secular professions, perhaps caste has no role. Because caste has an entire way of life codified, from dietary restrictions to whatnot, provided you are performing the very same vocation as your previous generation. Which is why there is a clear connection between what you eat and what you do, because you come down to the basics of Hindu philosophy, which is whether it is tamasic or sattvic or rajasic, and accordingly the food is commensurate with the profession that you start, or let's say you undertake. And by and large, since it was hereditary in nature, that used to be the case. So it was a transmission of not just the profession or skill set, it is a transmission of a way of life. That today is now limited to very small enclaves or islands, namely in Veda Patashalas, or in places where somebody is still performing a hereditary profession, such as goldsmiths are by and large still hereditary. Weavers are still by and large hereditary. Sculptors are by and large hereditary. Exceptions exist, but exceptions only prove the rule, they don't destroy the rule. So, in these professions, whether you like it or not, they will follow the practices of their ancestors, because the profession is elevated to the status of a kala or an art, and therefore there is a certain degree of sanctity that is imputed to it. I know of several Muslim sculptors who adopt Hindu practices during the sculpting period because that is what is expected of them. In stark contrast, in certain states, like in Tamil Nadu, what they have done is that sculpting has been reduced to a 1-year certification course, that the entire way of life has gone to the dustbin. Nobody knows what they're talking about because you have reduced an entire way of life to one certification program. This is where an art or a vocation or a profession is reduced to a career or a job. So in terms of contemporary relevance, I would say those people who subscribe to those ways of life, leave them alone. Just as you wouldn't want your way of life to be interfered with, you have no business interfering with their ways of life as long as it doesn't affect you. You may have perpetually offended notions or offensive notions with respect to caste. That's your problem, that's not their problem. If you're willing to leave the Jarawas of Andamans alone because you believe that they're not supposed to be interfered with, it's perhaps the last remnant group in terms of protecting that particular way of life, why wouldn't you want to extend the very same benefit of doubt and the very same position to others? Because you have chosen to ride the hide horse of a casteless society on a regular basis. So whether it will make its presence felt once more, I don't know. I really have no idea. But this much is clear. You have tried, everybody else has tried, caste is not dying. It won't die, period. You have only entrenched that identity across the board. It has only gone from 50% to 69% to 76% in certain states. So all you can do is cosmetic changes. Road के नाम से जाति को हटाओ, लेकिन सर्टिफिकेट में पक्का डालो. The Dravidinous nonsense does the very same thing. They don't want to recognize that the Chodars were Devas because apparently that's casteist. They don't want that. But election के time पे आपका arithmetic किस पे बैठता है भाई? Caste blocks के ऊपर बैठता है. So I don't think, at least I would want to hear about a casteless society coming from the blessed mouth of a politician. आप रख लो, please zip it. It's not important from you. So whether its value will be fully recognized and so on and so forth, okay, let's ask a much more uncomfortable question. How many people today will have the discipline and the rigor to practice all the obligations that come with following that particular way of life? From V1 to V4, let's see what happens. Because it's not an easy obligation at all. It will start with the investiture ceremony. Daily, the Nitya Karma becomes a regular part of your schedule. Dietary restrictions. You can't eat outside. Which is exactly why chowl trees were built in temples and other places for different communities to cater to their dietary restrictions. And all we can see there is Brahmanism and casteism, when in fact it was meant to cater to different dietary restrictions. Ask all these questions, it will open a can of worms. Answers exist, it's just that we don't have the stomach to stomach those answers. Next. Yes.
Namaskaram, sir.
Who is asking?
This side, sir.
Raise your hand, please. Oh, sorry. Please.
Namaskaram, sir.
Yes.
I'm Nishant Vidyarthi. I'm a MA German student. I'm an activist, like environment activist in our campus in JNU. And my question is, what should be the Hindu approach to political agitation and solution for the environment or Mother Nature? Like, is there any plan of action for this? And why can't we have more environment activists so that the narratives are not to be imported from the West, like Greta, you know?
Because I think in the Hindu mind, or at least the conservative Hindu mind, environmentalism has been entirely outsourced to the left, unfortunately, to their own detriment. You don't take a particular issue seriously, someone else is bound to. Now, whether they are doing that to protect environment or whether they are using environment-based communities as weapons against the rest of the Hindu Dharma is for people to ask. So here's what happens. So I think when this Char Dham highway and all that was being discussed, and I think the road widening of Uttarakhand was being discussed. Problem is, even those who were clearly practicing conscious Hindus, when they said road widening in such an eco-sensitive region for non-defense purposes will lead to more commercialization in a fragile eco space. We are being accused of being communists. So the discussion has now come down to these stupid binaries. I can't be a practicing Hindu or even a Hindutavadi for that matter and also say nature and Prakriti are an important part of Sanatana Dharma. That lesson needs to be told to the Hindus first, more than anybody else. Because they seem to have divorced it in their heads. So that is effectively the Christianization of the Hindu belief system, where Prakriti no more features in your scheme of things. There is one thing, so in the book I've clearly said, one is to convert the Hindu, the second is to Christianize Hinduism. What has happened since 1857 is the second category, which is even more pernicious, which is now you look at everything about yourself through the Christian lens. So whether this practice is rational, whether this practice is modern, why on earth are you insisting on using the word modern? Do you understand its connotations? Do you understand its origins? It has a very clear colonial anti-indigenous slant to it. Don't use it. So I think in my limited, let's say, interactions with the public, I've said, a strong temple ecosystem translates to protection of the environment around in terms of the ponds, the lakes, and the let's say the forests around it, and forest-based communities around it. I've given some examples. How certain mathas depend on tribal communities exclusively for their, let's say, for the wood that is needed to keep their kitchens burning, without resorting to modern kitchenry, so to speak, to ensure that there is a livelihood there, there's a continuity here, so on and so forth. Are there any PhDs in this country actually focusing on the relationship between a strong temple ecosystem and conservation of nature? Maybe you should seriously consider one of those topics. There is enough to research on. I am giving anecdotes, but I don't think even my position is as rigorous. My first principle position may be rigorous, but the empirical evidence is shaky because I don't know beyond this. We need more research on this. Standard go-to topics when it comes to speaking about Hindutva is conversion, religion. I think they are very important topics. But look at the other issues as well. Your agenda is primarily negative or other oriented. Let it become positive. Which means, what can you do on the education front instead of constantly crying about it? What can you do on the history front? What can you do with respect to the discussion on gender identities before it succumbs to woke garbage? That's the next massive, worst, let's say, export from United States, which you must be extremely wary of. It's even worse than radioactive uranium. Because it's going to kill every societal structure within and teach us about how to treat the non-binary gender identity. Come on, don't teach us. We have deities who are actually in that particular Tritiya Prakriti. And there are communities and spaces where they're protected. All of that will be repackaged with a lot of anger. And the standard Marxist oppressive trope, and will be told, no, this is all about, from caste-based patriarchy, it will now translate to gender-based, let's say caste-based oppression, it will now translate to gender-based oppression. I would genuinely hope that our to-do list expands.
You can guide us.
I have enough to do already, man. How much will I do? See,
I have my people to work for this.
whatever I have, my limited role has been knowing fully well how the other side operates. Yes, there is an other side. If this translates to otherization, I'm sorry, it already exists. That is the reality which I live in. I know how it operates in my fraternity. So nobody is in a position to pontificate me about otherization. So, since that exists, how do you make sure that you have a very clear positive agenda? It's not in the interest of scoring brownie points with the other side. It is in the interest of protecting the way of life which you claim to be fighting for. But if you're constantly interested only in this tutu meme with the other side, then you're missing out so much which is under the radar. You're only scratching the top soil of the surface, you're not going below that. That is largely also the consequence of looking at this particular concept entirely and purely from the political lens. Decoloniality, dharmic civilizationism should not and cannot be outsourced to the state entirely or to the political apparatus. It is a societal, let's say, construct.
if the society changes the way it looks at things, it will throw up political options which also look at things differently. Which means the next time you have an EIA assessment, an environmental impact assessment before, let's say, a project is started, you'll ask better questions. I genuinely don't believe that the current EIA model, especially after the changes that have been undertaken, is good for environment. It doesn't matter who's in power. What is wrong, especially if it affects nature, because you'll be penny wise and pound foolish and it'll come back to bite you maybe 15 years later or 20 years later. If the Himalayan water table or let's say that entire ecosystem is affected in any way, the better part of the Gangetic Plain right until Vindhyas will be affected. It doesn't matter who says it. If that is the reality or that is the projected reality, you might as well be bloody careful about it. In an institution such as the JNU, I would hope that there is some research on this. And that way, apart from, let's say, taking back and reclaiming the space that has been ceded to anti-nationals, take it back but with a very positive agenda, with rigorous research, both in terms of archival research and primary data. That's what I would do.